Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Please, sir, can I have some more? More? More beef, more chicken, and bigger noodles.
Shall we talk about some things? How are you? You know what? Let me just tell you this. Before you answer that, okay. I would like you to answer under the context of the fact that tonight The show we're doing tonight represents our foray into year 3 of the next
No.
3.
It's crazy.
That's suddenly a thing.
Yeah,
You know?
it's like what's it? 2 is a what's that expression? 3 is a habit. 2 is a
Accident.
2 is an accident. 3 is a habit. What it is? So it's a habit. I guess it is habit.
It's a habit. That's what we've done. We've created a new habit.
And now I'm going to need a 12-step program to get out. Because it's an addiction.
That'll take years. I am not worried.
That's right.
So, yeah, 3 years. So we did our birthday, actually, which we didn't say this at all on this, which we totally should have done this. Our birthday was on Sunday, which was just a few days ago. And that was the day we were doing a film board, a very special episode of VSE of the film board with Steve and Tommy Handsome, and we did Thor, the Dark World. I don't know if you've heard of that film.
So we rang in our third year with a good old smack of Thor's hammer.
That's right.
What's his hammer's name? Mjolnir?
Mjolnir, yeah. Mjolnir. Yeah, it's not great.
Ringing in the new year.
So I'm very excited about this. I'm thrilled to be moving into year 3. It's so fun, and to celebrate, we've got a couple of new things. We got some updates.
Okay.
The first one is, we talked about the Stitcher smart radio.
Yes.
You know about this?
Yes. I've heard about it. Yes.
But if you go to Stitcher, you go to the show site, you search for us on the Next Reel on Stitcher. You now have the ability to listen on the web, which I think you could always do, but they've redone their show page, so you can listen easily, you can share it easily, and more importantly, you can rate it and review it easily. And so I have been getting some questions from folks, because we talk all about this iTunes thing, it's really great, great for iTunes, but what about us if we don't use iTunes and we want to rate the show? Well, Stitcher is it's another network. It's a great place to rate and review the show. If you like the show, we appreciate it if you add it to playlists over on Stitcher and review the show. Give us a positive review and positive rating. And like iTunes, the more you review it, the more you rate it, the easier it shows up for others when they search for topics around film critique and movie reviews and things like that, like we are prone to do. So we appreciate that. So that's number one, is Stitcher, the massive update to Stitcher, and congratulations to the whole Stitcher team. They did a great job. Okay, that's number one. Number two, to celebrate launching year 3, I turned on a Google Plus show page for this show. Much like our facebook.com/thenextreel, we now have a Google Plus page. It's our address is google.com/plus, like the plus sign if you're not used to that, google.com/plus the Next Reel podcast will get you to our show page. And it is so new that, literally in the last half hour I turned it on. So it's very, very new. But that also, there is a tab on there where you can review the show. You can give us a review there too. If you a review and a ratings, we would sure appreciate your reviews of the show there too. If you have kind words to say, we would appreciate hearing them there as well. So there are now, in addition to iTunes, there are 2 other places for those of you who have kind words to share. We would appreciate hearing that. Google Plus, facebook.com/thenextreel, Stitcher.com.
That's fantastic.
I think it's good. It's a good way to launch the new year. We've got some stuff we're going to post on Google Plus, and the Blog Whisperer, the kindly Steve Sarmento, the Blog Whisperer for the Next Reel, is going to be posting his material there. He is a kind and gentle ruler of our social media presence.
I wonder if he's going to start his own page at some point and start offering people help, and he can speak to their blogs when their blogs get unruly.
He should do that, because sometimes blogs have been known to get cantankerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
He'd be a good one to do that.
He would.
Bridle him up. Yeah. So the other, let's see, what else can we do? Give us an update on, we have 2 things. We've gotten some rambunctious requests We've got somebody who has requested that we review I don't even know if it's original, but the 1990s Captain America film. And we have the friend of the show, Rory, from Mexico City, who says that we need to review The Karate Kid. And this, I think, was a dare because she listened to the show where we weren't quite so kind to say anything. And I think she was daring us to say something bad about a little Macchio, Ralph Macchio. Right. And you weren't thrilled with that. That was not a good thing for you.
Well, I threw down the gauntlet. If she wants us to talk Karate Kid, she can, participate in this challenge or this contest that we have right now. Go to iTunes, leave us a comment, and between in November, December this year, we're going to pick one person who leaves us a comment, and they get to pick a movie that we're going to talk about next year. And that would probably be the only way that I think I would want to put Karate Kid into a series.
Well, here's the thing. This is what I was going to say to you. This is my pitch. I really love this thing. I love what you've brought up here, and you may have created a little bit of a monster. But here's what I think. I think we should just leave 4 slots a year open. Once a quarter, like once every 3 months, we just leave a slot open for a user-suggested show. And that'll be our user series, or our listener series, right?
Wow.
What do you think? Once a quarter, because I think we're going to have more than that of people who want to do it.
That seems pretty...
Come on, man. We got 52 movies a year. I think we could spare 4.
Let's try the first quarter next year. See how it goes.
You're right. I'm calling you out. I think you're scared.
Let's see. We're going to end up talking about Karate Kid. We're going to talk about
Captain America. And so it is
in the dark.
And Endless Love 81.
And Endless Love 81.
Here's the thing. I think that
that will be year 3 will be the last year.
I think that the listener series may end up being a series of 4 episodes that are each about 12 minutes long. But that's okay.
We talk about a lot of trailers.
That's good. I'm excited about it. How's the Instagram Guess the Movie Pony Prize challenge going along? Did anybody get it this week?
Yeah, somebody got it yesterday. I knew once I threw the image up yesterday. With the movie this past week, it was Old Boy, the original Park Chan-wook film, and that Spike Lee is remaking, and his version comes out later this month. I thought this would be a fun one to do because of that. It's got some amazing visuals. It's based on a graphic novel. And so the visuals throughout the film are really stunning. It was actually really hard for me to just pick the images for this week, and I was tempted to double it up every day, but I decided not to. And it was really tough for people until I knew yesterday's image was going to, for some people, probably give it away. Showing that hand grabbing for that octopus really kind of...
That did it.
Yeah, that did it. That was all that Hunt Thug Nasty needed to know that was Old Boy.
Thug Nasty, congratulations.
Hunt Thug Nasty.
In the hunt.
Yeah. That's right. He pulled it out and he won. So he is entered to win our Pony Prize this week.
Pony Prize. That's fantastic.
Have you seen that? Have you seen Old Boy?
No, I've never seen it. That's why I had no clue. I had no clue.
Let me just tell you, be prepared for the octopus scene. Because it kind of comes up on you and you're like, oh, okay, I guess he's doing that.
That's horrible.
Yes, it really was pretty horrible. I'm really interested to see how Spike Lee handles scenes like that in his remake.
Wow. So I'm looking at the picture right now, and I don't even know what to make of it. Like, there's an octopus. What's he doing?
Do you see what I wrote in the comments after Hunt Thug Nasty guessed it?
Oh, yes. I want to eat something alive.
And
it's an octopus.
And he does on screen for us to watch in all of its slithering glory. I mean, you and I tried octopus.
Yeah, well, it wasn't quite that big. Like
it was a little tiny piece of a tentacle.
It was not a whole octopus. That's a thing. But some of the images that you posted this week it's vibrant.
They were trippy. They were very trippy. Yes, indeed.
I love it. I love it. So, in the hunt for the Pony Prize. Congratulations. Let's see.
Got
what
a new
else?
one starting tomorrow. So
Do you have the film in mind already? You ready?
got
to
it
go?
all set, ready to go.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm loving this. I don't know about anybody else if they have, but I love it.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
I wish I could win, although I'm not sure. I think you're like I said, you're a tough master when it comes to these things. Man. Okay, what else do we have to cover? Do we have anything to cover before we jump into our trailers?
So as you guys know, we do have our Letterboxd account, letterboxd.com/thenextreel. What we're going to be doing, what we've actually started doing now, and what we're going to do next year, once Pete and I put together the list of movies we're going to talk about next year, we have on the watch list on our page on Letterboxd, we have all the films that we're going to be talking about between now and the end of the year. And then next year, once we figure that out, we'll fill it in with all the films that we're going to talk about next year. So if you're anxious to pre-watch movies that we're going to be talking about so that you actually have seen it before we actually have the show air, you can now know what we're going to be talking about, and you'll be able to check it out, and you'll be all caught up.
I like that.
Yeah, it'll be a nice way to give people a chance to have it in their heads before they jump in and we spoil the heck out of it. So
let's do it. Let's do trailers. This week, my trailer of the week, I'm going to go ahead and go first, Andrew, because my trailer of the week, I'm going to call it a redemption trailer.
Wow, that's strong words.
It's heavy because, I told you last week, or maybe it was the week before, I don't remember, I told you I watched Les Mis, and I was not thrilled with Russell Crowe in that film. I was not thrilled. I don't know if I'm going to be thrilled with Russell Crowe in 2014's Noah, but the trailer hit this week, and it looks like a giant animal film with raining chaos in the form of fire and brimstone. And if you know anything about me, I'm a big fan of fire and brimstone, just general destruction movies. I don't know. You probably don't know that about me.
So you're wanting to see. So this is like 2012 for you, but taking place in the good old days.
I'm not in the good. That's exactly. I think that's what Noah called it. One day, my child, we will look back on these as the good old days. This looks like just a big scale, a giant scale CG movie, and I love, I generally like these things, and so I'm not, here's why I'm not quite looking forward to it, because there are reasons I'm not looking forward to it. Darren Aronofsky is one of the reasons I'm not looking forward to it.
Whoa!
What?
Whoa!
What? Right? I just threw down film school.
Oh my goodness! No.
Right?
Oh,
I did not like The Fountain. I did not like Black Swan.
I didn't like The Fountain either, but Black Swan was great.
Oh, please. No,
I almost picked Mila Kunis's new trailer as my trailer this week.
I haven't seen what. Which one was that?
It's called Tar.
I haven't seen that one. Mila. So this is Darren Aronofsky is Noah. This is I don't know. I mean, this may be his biggest. I guess arguably, Black Swan had some pretty elegant effects, but this is certainly an overt effects film. And
it is.
It stars. We've got Emma Watson. We've got Logan Lerman, Jennifer Connelly. Oh, Jennifer Connelly. And Anthony Hopkins, the All-Father himself, joins Russell Crowe in Noah. Comes out March 28th, 2014. I am just thrilled that I picked a trailer that is not already out yet. That's and
then don't forget you've got all the green alligators, the long-necked geese, the humpy-back camels, and the chimpanzees, the cats, rats, and elephants.
Go ahead. Think of an animal.
But
there are
two. Born. But the loveliest of them all, that I was a little disappointed to see that there were no unicorns in the trailer. I thought this was based on Shel Silverstein's poem.
I love that you have it. You have it right on the tip of your tongue, though. That was good.
Yes.
That's points for that.
There's lots of points for that. Pulling out the old shell. Come on.
I know. Dropping a little shell bomb. All right. So that's my trailer. This is one. If you haven't seen the trailer, head over to thenextreel.com and you'll see it right on the front page. Look at it's right there in the notes for this episode, this very episode, the current episode front page. You'll see my trailer, and right next to it, you'll see Andy's trailer, which is.
My trailer is Dear Mr. Watterson.
Oh, this made me cry in my heart.
I know. You know, growing up with Calvin and Hobbes was a delight. It was like a reflection of myself as a child, and it was a reflection of the child that I wanted to be as a child, and just everything about it was just struck to a core of kind of me growing up, and I always loved the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip. This documentary looks really interesting. It's this filmmaker, Joel Allen Schroeder, or Schrader, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his last name, but he is decided to make this documentary where basically he goes around and interviews lots of other comic strip people in that world, like Berkeley. What is it? Berkeley Breathed?
You're the one who knows pronunciation of things.
Except for him. I've always been nervous to say his last name because I always feel like I'm going to say it wrong. And I'm sure I'll say it, breathed, breathed, breathed. There, I said all the variations. And I probably got it wrong every time. Anyway, he, of course, did the like A Wish for Wings That Work with, what's that penguin's name? I can't even remember.
Yeah, you're gonna get me.
I know.
You're talking about the
other, Berkeley's comic strip. What was his comic strip? The Far Side.
The Far Side, right?
No, not the Far Side.
No, that was not the Far Side. It was the one, the political one, right?
I don't know. Anyway, whatever his was.
This is gonna make me crazy.
I know, it's totally gonna make me crazy. But anyway, he's not really the point of this. We'll come back to whatever it is. Outland. That's what it is.
What?
Outland and Opus.
Opus. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. In Bloom County.
Yeah. Oh, it was Bloom County, Andrew. Crying out loud. It was the political one. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yes. With the penguin and the cat.
And the cat.
Yeah, that was always coughing up fur balls. Anyway, he's one of many people that Joel interviews in this film, talking about what Mr. Watterson brought to the world of comic strips with Calvin and Hobbes. He did it for, I think it was about 10 years that Calvin and Hobbes was, that he was creating these for the comic strips. And it created this magic, and it created kind of this whole thing that everybody gravitated to and was drawn to, and it really kind of stepped up the level of the playing field for the world of comic strips. And it just looks like a great documentary that kind of taps into that search for one's youth and trying to kind of explore what made it so great and everything. So I very much am excited to see this film. I'm very much wanting to pull out all the old Calvin and Hobbes strips again and start reading them all again after watching this trailer. So
totally.
Yeah, and this is a documentary that's opening like right now. It opens today, the day this show goes live. I don't know how wide it is, but definitely check it out if you're a Calvin and Hobbes fan, or if you're too young to have ever seen Calvin and Hobbes in the comic strips. Check out some Calvin and Hobbes books and read them, and then watch this documentary.
Well, and it's live in iTunes, I believe.
Is it streaming already?
Yeah, it's on the 15th. I think they said it was going live on the 15th.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah.
Yes,
my trailer.
That's your trailer. It's a fantastic trailer. I love it.
Yeah.
Very excited for that one. And now we're gonna test for the Redbelt.
Time up. Think he has a handicap? No. The other guy has a handicap if he cannot control himself. Breathe. You know the escape. Breathe. There's always an escape.
Your check bounced.
My check?
The martial arts supply. I can't make the rent. You have no cash.
There's one rule. Put the other guy down.
Just calm down. I'm calm, man. I'm calm. You calm down.
Just wanna have a drink.
Why'd you come out alone? You looking for trouble?
What happened? Bad boy jumped on a movie star. What about you?
Nobody knows who I am.
A man distracted is a man defeated.
It's an invitation from Chef Frank. You train people to fight. I train people to prevail.
Tell them your training method.
The fighters before a fight.
3 marbles.
Each fighter has a 2 in 3 odds of choosing the white marble. White marble's a pass.
What if he picks the black marble?
Black marble's a handicap.
Who imposes the terms of the battle will impose the terms of the peace.
You stole my idea.
You can't copyright an idea.
He has a document of his training regime that he's used for many years.
You want to make some money? Fight on the undercard. It's worth $250,000.
Competition is weakening.
What about the fighter's family? What do they eat?
The fight is fixed. We pick who gets the white marble. Who gets to pass tonight? You.
I'm ending the charade. Mr. Flair, I need to talk to you!
You think you're going to the ring? You're going nowhere, Mike. You're going nowhere.
There is no situation you cannot escape. You know the escape.
I've been so nervous about talking about this trailer with you, or talking about this movie with you.
Why?
Because you hadn't seen it.
So you know what it means, though, now?
What?
Is that you and I are going to have our own MMA match. It'll be the next real throwdown.
IFA, MMA, Battle for the Belt. Okay, so we're doing, this is the second in our very brief series of films that are written and directed by the multi-talented David Mamet. Multi-talented and curmudgeonly David Mamet. Wielder of words.
He is a curmudgeon.
He is a curmudgeon. Now, I feel like you should go first. Do you think? I mean, I know how I feel.
I'll go first. I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right, go.
I liked it. This was a really interesting film because, we had talked about Cannes films last week, specifically The Spanish Prisoner, but also had mentioned how David Mamet was kind of drawn to these different Cannes films, House of Cards, Spanish Prisoner, Heist, even looking at something like Ronin. He really likes this world of the Cannes. And even you look at some of his other films like Glengarry Glen Ross, there's a little hint of a crime happening that you're kind of following along with. And this was an interesting film because even though it's kind of this I don't even know if I'd call it a fight film, it really is kind of more of a character study that takes place in the world of mixed martial arts. But it still has this level of kind of cons and all these games that people are playing. Maybe because he's also kind of, there's a little bit of an indictment against Hollywood in this film. It kind of brings out that kind of world of the con forward because the way that he's playing Hollywood, it does seem like a world of cons and people who are just out to kind of screw you over. So it felt very interesting to me that watching this, I'm like, gosh, he really loves these con stories. It seems to be something that he's really drawn to and adept at. And looking, researching for the film and stuff, I did find that inspired by this movie, Roger Ebert coined a new genre, which he calls the twister. And that's a movie that's less identifiable about what it's about than how it's about it, specifically one that constantly plays with the audience's expectations. Twisters don't twist only at the end. They pull one rug from another out from under our feet until we're astonished by how many rugs we were standing on. Sometimes it's almost impossible to keep all the versions of reality straight. Sometimes it's a futile exercise because we realize the film could continue indefinitely. But when a twister is in the hands of a master like Mamet, it can be devilish and ingenious. This film, after it was done, I stepped back and I tried to piece it together in my head as to what was happening, as to how our protagonist, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, how he got into this situation that he was kind of forced to fight. And I could see the pieces there, but I could not for the life of me figure out how it all worked. And I felt like that was a failing on the part of Mamet putting this together, and it bothered me that it felt like what we were talking about last week, The Spanish Prisoner. When I actually stepped back and thought about it, I was disappointed. I was like, gosh, I felt like this should be something that stands up by itself. Like when I look at it in repeat viewings, I want to see that everything lines up. But then you get to the end of the film, and even though I felt unsatisfied with how the film played out, with all the twists and turns and everything, the way that it ended, I was really satisfied. So that's my experience with this film.
And so you only watched it the one time?
I watched it the one time,
okay.
And then I listened to Mamet talk about it in the commentary.
Yeah. I am so glad to hear you say that. Even though I think your experience in the middle of the film was fair to middling, I'm so glad to hear that overall it was a good experience for you. Because for me, this is a film that has gotten consistently better every time I've watched it. And I was kind of hedging last week how excited to get about this film that we were doing it, because in watching it this week, I found myself just still riveted by it. Now, I think that's because, in some respects, it is a perfect film, and I don't mean that saying that there's nothing wrong with it, but that it is, to me, structurally surprising every time I watch it. It seems like every segment, it doesn't even feel like acts in this film, right? In terms of the structure of it. Every time you think you get a handle, as you were saying, you think you get a handle on what the film is, it's not. You think immediately it's a fight film, but it's not a fight film. Then it's sort of a thug film, but it's not really a thug film. Then clearly, as you say, it's an indictment of Hollywood film, but it's not an indictment of that. Lasts not very long. Then it's a con film. He clearly was there. There was a con pulled on him, and he had to piece that together and realize that this sort of level of betrayal as a result of the con in his life was significant. But then it didn't. The con ended up being sort of a MacGuffin, because what the film really was about was a character redemption film. It was a film about watching this guy stick to what he believed in at his very core, and allow us to watch that in spite of every cultural force acting against what he believes in, he was ultimately rewarded for his truth.
Right.
And I find that closing sequence is a gut-wrenching sequence when he bows and accepts the red belt at the very end with no explanation, and particularly no sound, no cheering applause. It is the most sober power, the most sober appreciation of that redemption that I feel like I can think of in film. You look at films like what was the other Russell Crowe, Ron Howard film, the Cinderella Man. You got these other fight films that end up being this sort of saccharine celebration of redemption, and this one I feel like was in fact some of the most human.
Well, it's interesting. Speaking to that point, I mean, I can see why this film didn't do well at the box office. It's, people have an expectation in sports films, and they really want them to be those kind of Cinderella stories, right? That's what makes them work so well. This, in a way, it is a Cinderella story, but it's not done in a way that people expect. And so I can see why people... it's funny reading about how they marketed this film. They had two marketing directions that they took with it. One was marketing to kind of the art crowd at all the high art theaters and stuff like that. The other was marketing it on like Spike TV and everything, marketing to the MMA crowd and the fans of that Ultimate Fight Night, Ultimate Fight Champion, right. UFC crowd. Marketing it toward those people, because I mean it does have a lot of those mixed martial arts champions and all those people in the film, and they're fighting, they're commentators, they're trainers, they're just all throughout the film, they're helping put the film together and all that sort of stuff. And so, but I just don't think that that those crowds are necessarily going to get into this film as much as maybe Mamet was hoping for. It's not your typical Jet Li fight movie or something like that. It's not The Expendables.
No, my goodness, it's not.
It's not something that you can go and just kind of turn your brain off and watch a bunch of people just, pulling out their mixed martial arts and just kicking butt and, having a lot of fun with it. This is really
well, and Mamet himself said this is, I'm not making a fight film, right? I mean, it's clear in the first 15 minutes that this isn't a fight film. And one of the things I like so much about it is when you see guys like Randy Couture and Ensign Inoue in this film, just how seriously they are taking, and sort of soberly they're taking their roles in a film where the fighting is not central. And I think case in point, the final fight, not to jump too far ahead, but I think the final fight is a beautiful example of this, right? It's a grappling kind of fight, but ultimately when it comes time for the final blow, where he is, he runs up the wall, he sees his old master, in the audience and runs up the wall and does the flip and ends the fight.
Right.
We hardly even see the run up the wall. It is like a half a second clip cut. So we are in that way we are experiencing that fight that happens kind of in the alleyway between the ring. It doesn't even take place in the ring, and I think that for me is very much a metaphor of the way fighting is treated in this film. It is as much a sideline kind of experience to the real story as the ring is to this hallway where the final fight takes place. And I think that, as you say, I mean, that's risky from a marketing perspective because it really, it's telling you need to focus on something elsewhere. You're watching my hand over here, but what I need you to look at is way over here in my other hand. Mm-hmm. So, but for me, it was very powerful. And again, it gets to that same story of, it's that same feeling of, similar, ironically, what I get from The World's End, which hit iTunes this week in pre-release, and is still great. It's that experience of coming to terms with what it means to sort of be a grown-up or to be a man, in air quotes, and to come to terms with one's own kind of stance in life. And sort of, for me, I walk away from this film feeling really energized with the reward at the end. I think this is the film that to me celebrates David Mamet's use of language better than any other. I would say it's the film that matches performance to his use of language better than any other film in the catalog that I have experienced. And there are some I haven't seen, but I would rank this higher than, in terms of performance to Mametism, higher than Glengarry Glen Ross.
Wow. See, I'm not there yet. I liked the film. I certainly have problems with it. There's definitely some problems I have, and you have the benefit of having seen it a number of more times than I have.
Right.
So for me, Glengarry Glen Ross still stands out as a much higher level, and I really love that film. This one, I feel like I need to see it some more. I mean, I do feel like I have problems with this film. Specifically, I felt the whole conceit of how Emily Mortimer's character, her character Laura, the way that whole scene when she first comes into his dojo and ends up shooting kind of coming into possession of Joe Collins's gun and shooting the window out. I felt all of that was a little it felt very forced to me. The fact that this police officer, I could see why he left his gun there if Mike Terry, Chewie's character, was like grabbing him, showing him this stuff with his harness and stuff like that. But the fact that he's leaving it there, this distressed woman is coming in. I feel like if he was a cop, he would have immediately picked his gun up and not leave it sitting there. The way that Mike was so forceful and demanding of take her coat, take her coat, take her coat, take her coat, that to me struck, going back to The Spanish Prisoner, of being way too repetitive because something's going to be happening, and then it just all of that rung not true for me. It felt very plot heavy, and I didn't like all of that. I liked the developments from that. I just didn't like that the way that particular scene played out.
I would agree with you on a couple of points in there, but I want to expand on them. I agree with you. I can't think of, and I don't know a lot of police officers, but I know enough to know that they at no point would that gun end up sitting on that banister ever, especially after they went to the trouble cinematically to show us him unlocking the trigger guard, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that just would not happen.
Right, exactly.
That she would come in and shoot the window, I did like, and I liked it because in each of these major characters, or in each of these secondary characters' lives, a thing happens to them that is massive. And to us, as we follow Mike Terry's path, that thing happens. It seems like we're supposed to really make sense of it and try to figure it out, but it is nearly immediately minimized to nothing, right?
Right.
We get and it starts from the very beginning when Emily Mortimer is driving to the pharmacy. We think, what are we supposed to make sense of these pills? She needs what we come to assume are some sort of anxiety pills or some, Valium or something to help her deal with what essentially is PTSD or some sort of post-traumatic experience from being raped, and this is. And to her, those experiences are massive, and yet to us, those experiences end up being minimized so we can move on to the next one. And the next one ends up being, Officer Joe, and he ends up, we follow Joe just for a little while, and the things in Joe's life are monumental to him. And they lead to him committing suicide, and that suicide ends up being marginalized so that we can move on to the next big thing. And so in that respect, I think this film is risky dramatically because it sets our expectation up that these big things are going to be subject of the film, and the result is not about any of them.
Right.
And I find that really rewarding to me as a viewer. This one works well for me in that respect.
No, I do like those elements. That's the sort of stuff that I think is interesting in the context of the story, the way that these things that are happening in each of these people's world, they play as things that people are having to deal with. Is there a reason that Joe ends up committing suicide? I think a lot of people would look at anyone who feels that they need to commit suicide as a way out as unnecessary. There's other ways you can work through that. But in his world, it does seem like there's some level of dignity. It's almost like, speaking of, harakiri, like I was talking about last week, it's like he has shamed himself in a way or something, and it's like the only way he can redeem himself is by doing that or something. It's interesting that he takes it so far where that's what he sees as his way out. And I am curious just how Mamet decided to play those. I think it's a really interesting way to choose to write a story where there's these big elements in all these different people's lives that come together and then get dropped so quickly because they're just elements in people's lives that they're dealing with. They affect the plot to a certain extent, but in no way are we dwelling on them. In a way, it's like that's backstory for the character. Emily Mortimer, her rape story, it's not necessary for the story except for the fact that it puts her into a situation where when this cop touches her, she freaks out, grabs the gun, and shoots the window out. And
that's
helps
all
her,
we need to know.
And then it helps her she has that moment of bonding with Mike Terry, where he kind of helps her cathartically through that by essentially putting her in the same situation and then teaching her how to kind of now get out of it, and bringing those two characters together. And then that's it. We don't ever come back to it again. And then it's like, then from that point on, she's lawyer Laura, and driving forward, doing all that. And then the way that you can get a great sense of character growth in her, and you can see how she's really changed over the course of the story at the end when she slaps him, because this is a guy who is teaching her there's always a way out. You can't back out of situations. You have to fight through. And here he is backing out and basically walking away from this. Mm-hmm. And I love that scene plays with no dialogue. It's from a distance. We see him walking through the parking lot or the parking garage. She comes across him. We can see that they have a conversation, and then she slaps him, and that's it. That's all we get. That, I mean, in a way, was almost better than some of the Mamet dialogue that he gives us. The fact that he delivered it completely silent, I was just like, that is the sign of a writer-director who knows how to use words and knows when to use words, and found that moment where it was more appropriate to use no words than to write a scene full of words.
Absolutely agree. Agree. It's funny. The same sort of applies to the same really directly applies to everybody that comes into Mike Terry's sort of entourage, right? I mean, whether they are working for him or against him, in some way you sort of have this metaphorical train of people that come in and out of Mike Terry's life, and by the end of the film, the pressure of the people that are hanging on his coattails, whether they need something from him or they're trying to help him, is just too great. And I love that feeling of intensity when he finally loses it and is walking down the sort of underhall below the arena and just using his skills in a way that against police and security guards who are all trying to restrain him, and he just walks through them like, I don't know, what would one walk through soft butter? That's gross, but you know what I'm seeing. I think that release of pressure is something that you want to see him do all through the film, and I think that for me is credit to Chewie Ejiofor's portrayal of this character. I think he does that skillful yet pent up. Masculine protagonist so well.
It's so much more soulful.
Yes.
Like, I really connect to him as a character I think in large part it's because this is a character who has dedication to his moral grounding that he's based in. And you see him as this whole element of the story progresses, and he's trapped in a situation where basically he has to go into this the part of this tournament and compete, even though it's completely against all of his morals and everything, because he feels that it's already going to be kind of, I can't remember what he said specifically, but it's when you compete, what does he say about, like, when you compete, you're already it's already fixed. You're diminishing your skills, or I can't remember what he says, but it's
something super wise.
So, yeah, it's a very Yoda-esque sort of thing, and he sees it as he's basically crossing that line, and because he has to, he sees no other way out, and he's going to have to demean himself in order to basically survive this whole situation that he's found himself in. And the way that the moral, like I was talking about earlier, that when she slaps him and he realizes that there's a way out and he has to step up and do this thing at the end, and it's really smart, and something that I completely didn't expect to happen. I was really kind of expecting it to somehow just be more of a, victory in the ring sort of thing, and somehow it helps him through this or whatever. I really wasn't sure where it was going, but the way that it developed and the way that he stood up to this whole group of the fight promoters and the fighters themselves, in order to prove that being honest and pure is better than just doing this for the money and trying to like throwing a fight because it'll draw the crowds, and then when you go back the next time and you fix that next fight so that you come out the victor, and it draws even more money and all this stuff. I mean, that's not what it's about, and I loved that whole thing, and that's why that end moment was such a powerful moment.
Well, and that, I want to not to focus too much on that last moment, but the trick of the eye that he plays in that last long cut is I think really a testament to Mamet's grown expertise in the medium, right, as a director. What we have seen, insofar as we've talked a lot about how, Mamet can hit you over the head with a theme, right, or a line or something. He really just beats you up with stuff he really wants you to know. And that first sequence with the gun and the window, and okay, it's there. But in the end, we see, in my opinion, just enough of the old man in the audience to understand that there is some respect there. There's a brief conversation in the back office about, you brought the old man for a fixed fight, but ultimately we see just enough of the old man such that we understand the relationship of reverence. But then that final cut comes, and we see Mike motion for the microphone to be lowered so that he can walk into the ring and say something. Right. And his eyes, you think, are focused for an impossibly long time on the microphone. And I don't know about you, but my reaction to that was, oh my gosh, this is his emotional kind of final speech. He's going to say something, and it's going to be in that microphone, and it's going to be powerful and overwrought Mamet, and okay, fine, I get it. But what steps into as he begins to bow before we see what he's bowing toward, and it turns out it's the old man presenting him with the red belt, which is, as this was the thing, this was the gun on the mantelpiece. What about the red belt? She says early in the film. Well, there's only one of those. And we don't hear anything else about it. We don't get any education about it. We don't get anything. All we know is that's a belt of reverence. And
and I think what we learn is, because what does he say about the black belt?
The black belt is a sign that you are ready to represent the school as a teacher.
And you can become a teacher, and you can kind of teach yourself. And what I thought, and I didn't know what the red belt meant until the very end. And then I thought, okay, so the red belt then means you are ready to represent the sport, because you have shown a purity of the purity and honor of what the sport represents, and it's almost like the top level, and there's something about that, the way that whole thing was portrayed.
Well, really and that's what I love so much about it is, again, it's that use of just enough, right? It's enough that we know that we have this incredible sense of reverence for that belt. We don't need to know why. We get to imbue that with whatever we think it means. I mean, for some it may be, he's a red belt. He has the power to turn off the sport now. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but
he can fly.
He breathes fire. But what I love so much about that moment is that it ends, in some ways, that presentation of the belt protects Mike from his monologue. It protects Mike from thinking too hard about what just happened, and it just rewards him for who he has become.
Yeah,
I love that.
I do too. One of my other problems that revolve around that, as much as I love that moment, it did make me question, okay, so how did the old man know that this was fixed? Because from the old man's perspective, all he sees is as the fighter, and I'm forgetting which is it Rodrigo
Santoro, Bruno Silva.
Yeah. He's coming out. No, actually, no, that's the brothers. John Machado as Ricardo, who's the fighter.
I get those confused. Is that John Machado?
Yeah,
Ricardo
John Machado.
Silva, because they were both brothers, right?
Yeah, they're brothers.
Yeah.
So Machado is coming out to fight because he's got this. He's the title card in this fight coming up against whatever the other guy's name is, and he's going in to do this fight, and Mike comes up and stops him because he does, the whole fixing of the fight and everything. This is all after their conversation. Once they start fighting, the cameras kind of come up and film them fighting, and it's projected all around the house. So from the old man's perspective, all he sees is he's sitting there enjoying the fight. The fighters coming up to fight, and all of a sudden Mike Terry comes up and starts fighting him in the aisle, and he doesn't hear anything. He doesn't really understand why this fight is happening. All from his perspective is he sees these two fight. He sees Mike Terry knock this guy out and then go up to speak. So that was a problem that I did have. Like, when I think about it too much, it's like, how does he know that Mike Terry was there representing the purity and the integrity of the sport?
Well, I actually didn't. I mean, I feel like I have thought about that, and I don't. To me, it was a sign that the professor actually was already aware that the fight was fixed, right? Mm-hmm. That he was a fixture, and he was there as a place of promotional honor, and that his act of rewarding Terry was a slight to all of these false kind of promoters who are promoting a rigged fight. Like, to me, at least to me, it makes the movie better, thinking that the professor is the professor. The guy knows things.
Yeah. But then my question would be, like, if he does know, then why did he show up in the first place?
Yeah, I don't know. Old people do funny things.
So I mean, I still have problems with it, and that's the interesting thing about this film is, even with these problems, like, when I think about it, it doesn't line up for me. Like, tying all of these, like, how did Tim Allen's character tie into this whole thing? And it's like, I can't quite put my finger on all of these puzzle pieces. It doesn't quite make sense to me, but I still found it compelling. And I think it's just because it was a really interesting look at kind of what you typically would expect for a fight film. It did feel like a Mamet fight film, in which he's just like, I'm going to give you a fight film, but it's not going to be about just the victory at the end. It's going to be a moral victory.
Yeah. And
it was interesting because of that, and I do like it because of that.
I think we've talked a little bit about Chiwetel's Ejiofor's performance as Mike Terry was fantastic. Tim Allen was in it. He was great. I mean, he was he played a very serious role. It was he was portraying issues that were huge in his life, these motivating issues that drive him to go to a bar unprotected in order to get a beat down. Those were massively important to him, but ultimately not important to Mike Terry's path. And I think Tim Allen did a great job in that film, in that arena. I think if there is one, I think, significant hole in the film that I have heard people complain about, and that doesn't bother me, particularly, but maybe it should, is that Tim Allen's con bit, right? There's the between Tim Allen and Joe Mantegna and the whole, the collusion around stealing Mike Terry's secrets,
right,
is clumsy.
Right.
Dramatically. Like, we don't quite understand, how does Tim Allen know enough about Mike Terry's teaching styles, early enough to be able to orchestrate this massive kind of theft of his teaching philosophy and intellectual property. That's one area where I find I'm just going to choose not to think that hard about that one.
Yeah, well, and that falls into the whole thing how I can't put my finger on these puzzle pieces is because it likely they don't make sense. Like if you try to actually put this puzzle together, it's not going to be an actual like picture of the Statue of Liberty. There's no real end image of this puzzle when you put it together. It just is it's several different puzzles that kind of all got mixed into the same box.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be able to put it together because they don't go together. And I think that's one of the problems of the film. And going back to what I was saying at the very beginning, it does feel like Mamet really likes these con stories. He likes these crime stories that have these twists where, you know, people are stealing things from other people, and there's all these ulterior motives and things that are going on. And you as you start kind of tracing, it's like, oh, that's interesting that person was there because of this, and this is happening because of that, and it leads you down these chains of events. But then when you try to put it together at the end, you realize, oh, well, it doesn't actually make sense. Because see, I thought Tim Allen. I kept asking myself, so is Tim Allen? Did they want him to go there purposefully because they knew that Mike was there and Tim was going to get a beat down, but they were doing it so Mike could save him, and then they were going to trick Mike to get into the fight?
Wow, you went way back.
I know. And see, well, that's the thing. It's like I clearly had a lot of puzzle pieces in my box that I was trying to figure out how they went together. So that was for me.
I think the whole Frank angle, Chet and Zena Frank, his wife, played by Rebecca Pidgeon, your favorite actress ever. That angle, the fashion designer angle, with Alice Braga playing Mike Terry's wife, Sandra Terry, who I love. I think Alice Braga was great, but there was this whole, I borrowed $30,000 from a loan shark. Well, we needed her to be indebted to a loan shark in order to motivate Mike Terry to do things that he would normally not do. That he's right. On the record saying, I will never fight in the competitive arena. Well, now he kind of has to. And so we needed that. But that, why Zena Frank would lead her on when she is already, stated as a fabric. She's written a book on fabrics, and she discovers this fantastic fabric from Sandra Terry, and she, leads her to believe that they're going to place this giant order. She has to borrow the money. She orders the fabric from Brazil, and then they go change all their phone numbers.
Right.
Like that's a puzzle to me. And that's the one I just can't, it's sort of heartbreaking to think about because it seems so clumsy to me too. Like that, I don't understand why they even need it. That whole angle, like that whole fashion designer thing. I don't get it.
Well, and the nature of that, it's like, were they that tied together between tricking him and then also tricking her to help trick him by doing this whole fabric thing? It really seemed like these people were going to ridiculous lengths to try to get Mike to fight for $50,000.
Could you have made this movie without Alice Braga or Rebecca Pidgeon, their characters, at all, and have any significant loss in what this film is all about?
Yeah, it totally would be fine.
I think it would make it better.
Yeah.
Even though I really like Alice Braga in particular, I think she is. I think she did a great job in this film. I really like the sort of the contrast to Mike Terry's character, and I think the one sort of dramatic function that she serves, probably the most important one, is the final betrayal when Mike discovers that she's, she, it turns out, is actually sitting in the audience with the Franks, and turns out everything's fine there. Was she actually was
and has no guilt
of? Yeah, well, she was somehow part of the collusion.
Right, and she has no guilt that the police officer is dead.
Yes, no, that was she doesn't feel bad about that at all.
Of course not. Well, she comes from this family of criminal fighter
thugs.
So it really is kind of it's an interesting familial situation that she's coming from, but it did strike me as a little out of left field when that all happened. It's like, wow.
Right. Okay, so in terms of let's say other angles of the film you want to talk about, we talk a little bit about cinematography because we've talked about Robert Elswit before. And what was it that we did? We did. Oh goodness! I just had it on the tip of my tongue.
The Town.
Yes, The Town. That's when we talked about it. Yeah. That was it. That was the one. But he's also done a lot of films that I really love. The Men Who Stare at Goats, and
he also did
Blood,
and he did do the Bourne Legacy we talked about.
Yeah. So he's kind of a favorite. Did you notice anything that was particularly Elswit about this film?
Well, it definitely stood out more than The Spanish Prisoner for the cinematography.
Dramatically.
It had a great look to it. It was shot CinemaScope. They went and shot this 2.35 to 1, so they had the really wide framing for everything in this film, and it really, I don't know if they needed it, but I always enjoy that. I enjoy seeing the CinemaScope films, and it just looked pretty.
Well, it looks like a movie. You know what I mean? Like a movie with a capital M.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it takes you back.
Well, and that's exactly what The Spanish Prisoner did. Just, I could see that he was doing things in there, but it never jumped out to me going, oh, this is a real movie. This is real cinema. Mm-hmm. I can really get a sense of everything that's going on here in this beautiful world or whatever. Elswit brings that out. There Will Be Blood, all the Paul Thomas Anderson films that he does, just all these films that he does where he really makes beautiful images to help tell the story. That's an interesting thing that Mamet actually said, and it speaks to him as a storyteller. He said that in film, all of the jobs on the film, they're all really focused, like all the people in the jobs are focused on two things. One is their own role, and the other is telling the story. So like the costume designer, one thing that they're really going to be focusing on is making amazing costumes that everybody's going to be in, but the other thing is fitting that into the context of the story and telling the story through that. The editor, he says, is the only person who really only is there to tell the story. And so, he was speaking how important he feels the editing is in a film, because that's the one person who finally drops all of that other focus on all of their own sorts of roles. Like Robert Elswit obviously is focusing on creating very beautiful images, very interesting images to look at, and telling the story. The editor is taking those images and only picking the ones that work best in the context of the story, because he's only there to tell the story.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
I think I think your point is well taken. That so much about Elswit's other work is to take big stories and tell them bigly. Tell them on a grand scale. And I think Redbelt, one of the things I like so much about it is that it operates very much in contrast to that. It operates very much in close-ups. It operates very much in it's that same sort of scrappy connection to physicality that the fighters end up having with each other. The close-ups on the slugs to the gut and the grappling, the much more sort of realistic fighting style that we sometimes see and sometimes don't see, just because of the way the camera is moving. And the way the film's cut together. I've already sort of highlighted my favorite, which is that final fight scene, which is, I think, both a testament to editing as much as it is to the actual movement of the camera around the sequence in that alleyway.
And see, I thought the fight scenes were, I thought they were shot beautifully. I was torn between there's something about the way they were edited that didn't work for me, or was there something about the way that Mamet maybe directed them that didn't work for me? I couldn't quite put my finger on it, that they didn't feel as I don't know what the word would be. I don't know if it's kinetic or just the way that the I could easily understand all the things that were happening. I don't think I quite enjoyed the fight scenes as much as the other elements of the film, but I enjoyed looking at the fight scenes. I just don't think that they got me as excited as I wanted them to.
But, I agree with you. And I think I would be interested in your perspective. Wait a month and watch it again. Because that's one of those things that grew on me. I remember very much not connecting with the fight scenes the first time I saw it. And I think it's partially because I wanted this to be, my expectation was I wanted this to be more of a fight film. And the connection I wanted to have to the fights was the same connection that I feel like I had with The Bourne Identity. It was as we moved toward the jiggly monkey shaky cam, we sort of get in more of that brute force, as you say, that kind of kinetic feel. And this film isn't, because it's not about the fighting, and it's almost like the cinematography and the editing of the fight scenes in particular are, they celebrate the fact that this is not a fight film. You're not going to get the whole fight. You're not going to see the whole fight. In fact, in one of the most important fights in the film, we're going to show you most of it through a security camera from high above.
Right.
And that's all you're going to get. You're going to get that, and you're going to get people talking about it. And that's all. Yeah. And to me, that grew on me in a very real way.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
All right. What else? Well, I'm sure you always have some. You have what? I bet two more things.
I have, I don't know, probably 10 more things.
Oh, goodness.
Well, I do think that, in this brief Mamet series, I think it's important just to talk a little bit about Mamet and his story, because I couldn't find a whole lot about him. I don't know if he just is kind of more like, as far as his personal life and stuff, if he doesn't really, there's not that much out there, but he's one of those people who began as a playwright, and he wrote a number of plays that did really well for himself. I mean his first published play was 1970, and he is, what is he right now, 65 years old. So his first published play was 1970, and he wrote a number of plays, including Sexual Perversity in Chicago, which was adapted in the mid 80s as About Last Night,
and again next year,
and right next year. That's right. Did they change the title, or is it going to be About Last Night?
No, it's About Last Night. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. American Buffalo, like we talked about last week, The Revenge of the Space Pandas, and then he started getting into. He actually had, I guess, he had an interest in the film industry, and it is a different way of telling stories. But in the 70s, he did write the script for The Verdict, and interestingly, The Postman Always Rings Twice, the remake of that film, he ended up getting hired to write that in 1981. And then after that, he finally sold the script for The Verdict and was nominated for his first Oscar for that. And then he went on to, I think Redbelt is his 10th film that he's directed. Let's see, he did House of Games in 87, was his first film that he directed. And then Things Change, Homicide, Oleana, The Spanish Prisoner, The Winslow Boy, State and Maine, Heist, Spartan, and Redbelt. And then just earlier this year, he directed Phil Spector, the TV movie for HBO about the famous record producer with Al Pacino. So, he hasn't done a lot of films, and he's done a lot of plays over the years. I mean, ever from 1970, he's still doing plays all the way up through last year, 2012. So he's a guy who's tapped into those two worlds, and he also is just an author. So he's a really interesting guy who clearly is interested in writing. And I didn't mention, he also writes a number of films that we've talked about on the show, like Ronin and stuff like that. And I find him a really interesting storyteller, and I like the way he tells his stories. And I think he's one of those writers that stands out in the world of writers as somebody like Aaron Sorkin, or I'm trying to think of like just other great playwrights. I mean, he's somebody who really stands out as somebody who has tapped into a way to tell stories and a voice for his characters that, yes, while it feels like it's Mamet coming out of them as opposed to like individual character voices, there's something so natural about the way that they speak in that Mamet speak that it is really appealing. And I think that he's going to be one of those people who will always kind of have a place in our consciousness because of that.
I think when I think about what Mamet kind of brings to actors, I compare him really easily, sort of effortlessly to some that we've talked about. Some Woody Allen, Preston Sturges. I think about Neil Simon in particular. Neil Simon is another one of those that I feel like has that great connection across stage and screen. I look at Mel Brooks. And John Huston and like these are writers with perhaps too overtly classic voices that are sort of their natural tells.
Yeah.
But they make them, they make them just so much more interesting to watch because for me, watching, these actors on this screen is watching Mamet's take on life, and it's his take on life. That's the affinity that I have with my relationship with him as a creator, and it has been interesting watching. I think just these two movies back to back, particularly to see how much I love Mamet and didn't love Spanish Prisoner again. I found that reaction. I love a lot about Mamet and the language, but I just didn't jive with that movie. I was worried in watching this film again that maybe my opinion of it was jaded, but I still get that sort of electricity that I get with this film, that I get to see. I really get a feeling like I'm sitting in his head as I'm watching him observe this universe. I get that same feeling when I read, certain novelists and certain, writers of nonfiction, Malcolm Gladwell or, Stephen King, or, it's that connection that I am most interested in their take on the universe around them as a result of my relationship with them over time.
And he's an interesting director. Listening to the actors talk about him, his style of directing is basically... first of all, he talked about Tim Allen and how Tim Allen came on board with this film, and how Tim Allen really wanted to be in this film, and Tim Allen's agent called Mamet and said, "Look, I know there's this part for this aging actor, and Tim Allen is interested." And he's like, "Well, he knows it's not a funny part, right? This isn't a comedy." And he's like, "Oh no, he knows." And it's not a big part. It's just a small part. I mean, it's a good part, but it's just small, and there's not as much to it. He's like, "Oh yeah, he knows." I'm like, and so it really took him aback. But Tim Allen really wanted to be in this. And then Tim Allen, who is so used to being in films where, he's a funny guy. I mean, he's a comedian. He's always used to improvising and cracking up and throwing lines in there. And he had to learn quickly that Mamet doesn't let you improv at all. And what Mamet had to say is like, if I can't write better than they can improvise, they should just go home. So he's just like, if you're going to improvise, I'm going to be the one who's doing the improvising, not you, because if you're doing it, then clearly I'm not doing my job. And so it's.
Did you, I don't know. Have you read his memo to the writers of The Unit, which is a show he wrote?
Yeah. That's something I read ages ago, and I can't remember it now, but I do remember. I remember it, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting. I think just the way he talked. First of all, he writes it in all caps, right. But like it is
screaming.
Yeah, it is. The whole thing is screaming. But this is. I'd like to read just a passage of it. This one section that actually goes into lowercase. So, and it's laced with obscenity. So I'll do my best to. Any, let's say, jerk, as above, can write, "But Jim, if we don't assassinate the Prime Minister in the next scene, all Europe will be engulfed in flame. We are not getting paid to realize that the audience needs this information to understand the next scene, but to figure out how to write the scene before us, such that the audience will be interested in what happens next. Yes, but, you reiterate. And I respond, figure it out. How does one strike the balance between withholding and vouchsafing information?
Vouchsafing.
Vouchsafing.
That was very French.
That was very French. That's information. That is the essential task of the dramatist. And the ability to do that is what separates you from the lesser species in their blue suits. Figure it out. Start every time with this inviolable rule. The scene must be dramatic. It must start because the hero has a problem, and it must culminate with the hero finding him or herself either thwarted or educated that another way exists. And to me, you look at that passage, that's the masterclass of Redbelt. Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at his mission as a writer, as a dramatist, right, he just demonstrated in this film his ideal structure of the heroic journey.
Mm-hmm. And he directs this way too. Like the actors say, he doesn't stop like after takes and talk to you about, well, let's talk about your backstory. Let's figure out why is your character doing this sort of thing. His whole focus is on the plot. What is it that your character is doing in the story here, and where are you trying to get to, and where are you coming from, and why are you trying to do that? And that's it. That's all he cares about, is what is happening in context of the plot. You're the actor. You figure out what it is that your character is going through and your backstory. Figure all that out yourself. I don't care. I just want you to have that in your mind as you're getting from point A to point B. That's really all he cares about. It's interesting. It's a really interesting way to tell stories.
Very, very. This has been, in that respect, it's been a really fun look at David Mamet, and a fun look at a curmudgeonly and opinionated director and writer at the helm. I've really had a good time looking at this stuff. I can't wait to do more.
Well, we'll have to, because as I sent you that link, I thought it was interesting that there's this unofficial honor code trilogy that Mamet did with Heist, Spartan, and Redbelt. Yeah. Which I thought was kind of an interesting little thing to find. I haven't seen Spartan. I have seen Heist, but like I said last week, I haven't seen it in ages. But what this one person said on RogerEbert.com, this trilogy features 3 protagonists who are trying to live their lives by a particular set of morals and ethics. Specifically, the principles of the protagonists in question are put to the test by various machinations in the narrative, and the protagonists must choose to either remain true to their ideals or acquiesce to the demands of the ever-changing modern world around them. So it's interesting that there's this little unofficial honor code trilogy that Mamet did. So, there's certainly an opportunity for us to come back and do some more.
I think we should. Let's do it.
Yes, indeed.
Right. Where do we go from here? We got to talk about numbers.
This film really did poorly.
Oh.
Like I said, it's not a film that's easy to market. They couldn't figure out how to sell it to people. They were advertising on Spike TV. Those people didn't want to come see it because it's too thinky. It's a thinkery sort of film.
Is that what they call that in the industry? I was just going to say that's an industry term, right?
It is. This is very thinkery. I'll have to add that to our lexicon on our website. So it just didn't do well. The budget on this I found to be $7 million. And I couldn't find what they spent on prints and advertising, but probably not a whole lot. It made domestically $2.3 million. Internationally, it only made about $330,000. So all told, the total gross was about $2.6 million. So that means when you look at it adjusted for inflation and all of that, it ended up it's in the bottom chunk on our list here. This film ended up at I just lost it here. It's just above Rush as far as how much it ended up losing. It lost about $46,754 per finished minute.
There is no accounting for taste.
It also did better than Sunshine and Joe vs. the Volcano and Ronin.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
It did better than Ronin?
Well, Ronin's budget was $55 million.
Oh, yeah.
So it definitely had a bigger budget to work with. And Ronin, what was its adjusted, total gross on Ronin was was about 70 million. Oh yeah, but Ronin, they spent quite a bit more on print and advertising. So,
right.
Yeah. So, and again, this isn't factoring in print and advertising, so it's a little hard to compare the two.
Well, I think we liked that Ronin too.
Oh, absolutely. Ronin is definitely one that's had a benefit of the cult following in its afterlife.
Yeah.
In the video markets, it's managed to really find a home. I don't know if Redbelt will ever find that home. Just like Spanish Prisoner, I think they're going to be relegated to kind of the dusty shelves with Oleana and things change.
Oh. Oh. Man,
I know I sound so harsh. Don't
you
I?
do. You sound really like that's a heartbreaking way to put it. God. All right, let's flick chart it.
All right,
head over to flickchart.com/the next reel, and you can see our stack rankings of the films that we have talked about on this show. If you head over to the extras tab on the website, you can jump on the extras menu item. You see it'll take you straight to the Flickchart Top 100, and you can see whether or not Redbelt's going to crack the 100 list here.
We'll find out in just a moment. Redbelt or Thank You for Smoking? I'm totally still Thank You for Smoking.
I know.
I mean, I enjoy Redbelt, but I think it's going to end up, for me, if it was just me, it would end up near the bottom of my list. I mean, there's just so many films I like on this list.
All right. Well, I'm with you on Thank You for Smoking so far.
Okay. Redbelt or Miller's Crossing?
Redbelt.
Now, over Miller's Crossing?
Yep.
Why is that? You're going to have to really sell me on this one, because Miller's Crossing, for me, totally wins out.
Well, and I like the Miller's Crossing. Obviously, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of the Miller's Crossing, but I think that there is something about the power of that of the redemption journey that we get in Redbelt that to me is so much more rewarding than any redemption story in Miller's Crossing. And I feel better when I'm finished watching Redbelt. And I can see myself putting Redbelt on first.
Really?
Yeah, if you give me the choice.
Interesting.
I think Chewie is really great in this film. I deeply enjoy watching him on screen in this film. More than any other character in Miller's Crossing, I deeply enjoy his portrayal of this character.
You're right. I mean, if it's just for Chewie, I would go with Redbelt. But I think between two convoluted stories, I would absolutely prefer watching Miller's Crossing's convoluted story. I just find it so much more satisfying as a whole. I mean, I think the thing that sells Redbelt for me is that last moment. I think there's a lot of just kind of a convoluted plot that I just don't really. If you look at it, it never comes together. At least Miller's Crossing, I can put it together after watching it a few times. Like, all those puzzle pieces make sense.
Well, I see that. I mean, I definitely see that. But in the end, I think the celebration of Redbelt is that it doesn't matter. And Miller's Crossing, the celebration of Miller's Crossing is that it does matter, and you can do it. And we've talked about that. I mean, that's an important element.
I'll give you Redbelt, but only because of Chewie. Because he is amazing in this film.
He's amazing in this film. All right.
Okay.
So, dang. Okay. What am I gonna have to give up? God, I feel like there's. Oh man, this is getting harder.
I know this is gonna be hard. Redbelt or Driving Miss Daisy?
I'm gonna go Driving Miss Daisy on this one.
Wow. Okay, I'm surprised that
What were you gonna say?
Driving Miss Daisy. I'm just surprised that you were. I thought you were gonna pull the whole thing with Redbelt again and Chewie and everything. But Driving Miss Daisy is an amazing character film.
Exactly, and that's exactly. I mean, based on the same logic, I cannot make the same case.
Right.
So.
Okay. Redbelt or Side Effects?
Oh. Redbelt.
Yeah, Redbelt.
Yeah, it's not a really...
Side Effects is just
not a really hard one.
Redbelt or It Happened One Night? I would go with It Happened One Night, because if I were to pick the two, I would absolutely go with the film that is just a pure joy to watch.
Well, It Happened One Night is more of a joy to watch, certainly, than Redbelt. And Frank Capra is, well, he's joyous.
It's hard to go wrong with It Happened One Night.
I'm going to give you It Happened One Night, too.
All right. Redbelt or The Professional?
Redbelt. You surprised?
Yeah, I am surprised by that, and I am a little surprised that I'm leaning toward The Professional.
What?
I know.
What?
I don't understand myself sometimes, like some of these old people, like the professor going to the match.
Man.
I know. Maybe it's Gary Oldman.
Oh no. God, you're. He was really good.
He was really good. I mean, he's pretty over the top in that.
He's like, he's like show stealing.
He is.
Okay, all right. I can't believe that. Like, I'm really torn, but I'll give that. The problem is that once we say that,
it's there forever.
Well, it's kind of there for. All right, go ahead. Let's see. You see what happens. Roll the dice on this one.
Okay,
you go ahead.
Belt.
This is on you.
Here we got Elswit on Elswit. Redbelt or The Bourne Legacy?
This is on you right here. This is what I was afraid of. Maybe it's Gary Oldman, he said.
Yeah, that's right.
We would not have had this conversation if you had gone with what I wanted to do.
I know. It's true. I mean, if it's just for putting something on to just watch it and enjoy it, it would be The Bourne Legacy, because it's just, even though it's the weakest of the Bourne series, it still is a lot of fun to watch. Redbelt is going to require my patience, and to watch it, I will have to really be in the right frame of mind, and I just don't think I'm going to be in the frame of mind to watch Redbelt that many more times in my life.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that. If that's what we're judging it by, I think that in terms of the strength of the Bourne Legacy is not a character film,
right?
And so you get that same sort of action thriller vibe, but in a way that has a lot more substance to it, and that makes me sad that we're leaning toward Bourne Legacy in that respect. But I think I'm with you.
All right, well, there you go. Number 82 out of 120.
All right, that feels okay. Yeah. At least it's ahead of Side Effects and Prometheus.
It is ahead of those two films, yes.
It is ahead of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
That makes me sad.
That's a sign that maybe we should re-rank Indy.
We do.
We have some, like the first 40 films on our list we need to re-rank, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of re-ranking we need to do. Yeah. One of these days. Listen to us re-rank our films show.
7-hour epic.
I'm sure everyone will be thrilled to listen to that. So,
this was a good show. Where do we go from here, Andrew? What's our next series?
Well, like we already talked about, we're going to jump into doing some international films. We haven't touched on a whole lot of international films yet. Or at least ones that speak in foreign languages. We certainly have done some British films. So this is our chance to jump into some other languages. So we're going to start with Intacto, which is a fantastic film from Spain, and then The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which is that's a tough, powerful film to watch. And then we're going to do Run Lola Run, Yee Yee, a 1 and a 2, and then end with City of God. So it's going to be a nice little series.
Nice series. And then right in there, we should say, just get ready for it, because the next film board, we just did Thor. The next film board is going to be what is now, with this episode, going to be our annual Hobbit episode. We're going to do Desolation of Smaug in 52 frames per second seizure round. So that should be a good show too. That comes up in 4 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, middle of December.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, good show.
That's it.
Do you have anything else? Nothing? You're good?
I think that's it. Oh, no, one last thing. I did have one last thing I was going to tell you.
Yeah.
The magician in this film is an actual magician. His name is, what is it? Cyril Takayama.
Yeah.
And he's an actual magician. He's a Japanese-American who... I think he was born here and then he moved to Japan, but he's been doing magic since he was like 7 or 8 years old. He's just always been fascinated with magic. And all of the tricks he does in the film are all real. There's no CGI or anything. So and I swear, I watched his stuff frame by frame because I was convinced that there was cinematic trickery going on. But even like the little marble trick where he has the black marble and in his hand and he switches it and it's the white marble. That's all, like, they do all of that. Like, he does all of that right there.
Yeah.
It's pretty stellar. And the Blu-ray of this actually has like a little 5-minute meet Cyril sort of thing where he just does all these like crazy like cigarette tricks and stuff, and it's just like so much fun to watch. So absolutely check that out if you can. And you can probably go to YouTube and look up Cyril Takayama. I don't know, I haven't looked, but if I find one, we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
And just see some of his magic tricks, the stuff that he does, because it's pretty amazing.
Well, and I don't think we ever said, since we've been talking about films with Ricky Jay, and then Ricky Jay's part in this was not, particularly notable for me. We didn't say anything about it, but we should say that we've talked a number of times about his about the documentary about him,
right.
Which now the name escapes me, but it hit a couple of weeks ago on iTunes that you can now download it, and so just search for Ricky Jay and you'll see it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
a deceptive practice. Deceptive practice.
Yeah.
The mysteries and mentors of Ricky Jay.
Yeah, right.
Good show. All right.
So yeah, it's a nice little thing having the magic stuff thrown into this. So
yeah,
fun.
All right, I gotta go to bed.
All right, I'm looking forward to our death match, Pete.
It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies.
And some stinkers.
Well, true. But producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
In Season 3, we covered even more great adaptations like The Night of the Hunter and It Happened One Night, both part of our Couples on the Run series.
We talked about No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers so rarely adapt someone else's work.
We had some fun rom-com adaptations like About a Boy, based on the Nick Hornby novel, and Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, adapted from Rachel Cohn and David Levithan's book.
In our terribly and naively named foreign language series, we discussed The Brilliant City of God and The Diving Bell and the Butterfly, which I won't ever be able to watch again, ever.
But could you read the original memoir?
I don't know, maybe?
We had our Richard Dysart series with adaptations like The Day of the Locust and Being There.
Plus, we had that fantastic interview with the man himself.
The one where we had him sit on the floor?
Because this chair was so squeaky. Good times.
We did our first Tom Hanks series with Forrest Gump, adapted from Winston Groom's novel, plus Apollo 13, based on Lost Moon by Jim Lovell.
And we did another year series looking at films from 1981, including Das Boot, Gallipoli, and Thief, all based on books.
Listeners can dive deeper into all of these original stories and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play,
movie,
video game. You bet. We have talked about some video game adaptations as well. It doesn't matter the source, just follow the link. Every purchase supports the podcast.
Check out the full list at thenextreel.com/originals and get reading, watching, performing, or playing today.